This video was brought to you by CuriosityStream, which is, just for this week, at its cheapest price ever of $11.59 a year. Get access to bonus TLDR content and all of our videos ad-free by signing up to the CuriosityStream Nebula Bundle deal right now. It's linked down below. Over the last few months, President Biden has made a number of eyebrow-raising comments about the situation in Taiwan. And these are difficult to square with the US's long-standing policy of strategic ambiguity on the issue. In fact, each time Biden's made such a remark, the White House has desperately scrambled to correct the record, insisting that US policy hasn't changed. However, news on Friday that the US was looking to deepen economic ties with the island imply that America might be taking a more hawkish stance on the issue than they had previously. So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the recent developments, whether US policy towards China has actually changed, and how China might react to all of this. So, as with every video on the internet about Taiwan, let's start with a bit of context. We've gone through the full history of the Taiwanese situation in more detail in this video, so if you want that, then it's linked below. But for now, the TLDR is that after the Second World War, China endured a violent civil war, fought between the incumbent KMT government and the Chinese Communist Party. Ultimately, in 1949, the war was won by the CCP, who established the People's Republic of China on the mainland, while the KMT fled to the island of Taiwan, where they continued their Republic of China. Despite this, both the CCP and KMT claim to be the rightful rulers of China. And that's despite the fact that the KMT only had effective jurisdiction over the island of Taiwan. And to this day, the People's Republic of China, who we'll just call China from now on, still claim that Taiwan is part of their Chinese territory. Now, until 1979, the US had a mutual defense treaty with Taiwan and recognized the ROC in Taiwan as the sole legitimate government of China. However, after the CCP supported the US in Afghanistan and Vietnam, the US abrogated the treaty, cut off diplomatic relations with the ROC in Taiwan, and recognized the People's Republic of China on the mainland as the sole legitimate government of China. But this doesn't mean that the US completely abandoned Taiwan. In late 1979, the US did pass the Taiwan Relations Act, which basically said three important things. Firstly, while the US didn't technically consider Taiwan to be an independent country, they did consider it to be a separate jurisdiction with its own governing authorities. Secondly, while the US wouldn't officially have any diplomatic relations with China, it would still have de facto diplomatic relations with Taiwan, and all previous agreements between the two would still hold. And thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, the Act states that the United States will make available to Taiwan such defense articles and defense services in such quantities as may be necessary to enable Taiwan to maintain efficient self-defense capabilities. Now, perhaps unsurprisingly, this long and wordy promise is known as strategic ambiguity, and it basically says that the US might defend Taiwan in a conflict with China. Now, this might sound complicated, but it actually does two things. Firstly, it puts China off actually invading Taiwan because they'll fear that they might be backed by the US, while simultaneously it puts Taiwan off unilaterally declaring independence and starting a war with China, because it's not an ironclad guarantee. For most of the last 40 years or so, strategic ambiguity has actually worked pretty well. The US never explicitly said that they'd support Taiwan. China mostly respected Taiwanese autonomy, and the US and China were able to maintain relatively cordial relations. However, the policy has come under some increasing strain in the last few years. That's because China's emerged as a hegemonic competitor to the US, and as a result, US-China relations have been deteriorating non-stop for the last decade or so, a trend that accelerated under Trump and has apparently continued under Biden. Partly because of this, both the US and China have subsequently taken increasingly hawkish stances towards Taiwan. Beginning in 2019, China started staging regular incursions into Taiwanese airspace, sending military and surveillance planes across the Taiwanese Strait Meridian line whenever Taiwan did anything that China doesn't like. As you'd expect, this sort of aggressive jingoism only encouraged Trump, who began his term by calling Taiwan's president, the first call between a US and Taiwanese president since 1979. In response to China's newfound bellicosity, Trump then opened up a new $255 million US representative office in Taipei, as well as increasing US Navy drills through the Taiwan Strait fivefold, selling Taiwan $8 billion worth of F-16 fighter jets that the Obama administration had previously blocked, and just a few days before leaving office, he lifted a ban on meetings between senior US and Taiwanese politicians. In the lead-up to the 2020 US presidential election, many expected Biden to take a softer line on Taiwan. However, while arms sales have slowed under Biden, in many respects he's continued with Trump's forward-leaning stance on Taiwan. He actually began his term by inviting Taiwan's de facto ambassador to his inauguration, the first president to do so since 1979. And more recently, he invited Taiwanese officials to his Summit of Democracy, which the CCP described as a mistake. However, perhaps the most noteworthy element of Biden's Taiwan policy has been his various unscripted remarks on the topic. In an interview with ABC in August, Biden seemed to imply that the US had a mutual defense agreement with Taiwan equivalent to NATO's Article 5. The White House did quickly backtrack, with a senior official insisting that the US's policy towards Taiwan had not changed. But then, in an interview with CNN's Anderson Cooper in October, Biden said that the US had a commitment to come to Taiwan's defense if attacked. And this is certainly a pretty long way away from strategic ambiguity. So again, the White House quickly backtracked, with White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki insisting that there had been no shift in US position. The latest apparent gaffe came on Monday, when Biden was asked by a reporter in Tokyo whether the US would get involved militarily to defend Taiwan, to which he responded, yes. The very next day, though, Biden tried to backtrack, insisting that the US position hadn't changed, but the damage had already been done. And on Monday, the Chinese foreign minister said that China expresses strong dissatisfaction and firm opposition to Biden's remarks, and that Taiwan is an inalienable part of China's territory. Anyway, this constant backtracking led many observers to conclude that the US is actually still pursuing its policy of strategic ambiguity, and that Biden's remarks were therefore merely gaffes, albeit pretty dangerous ones. However, this analysis has been thrown into doubt following a report from Bloomberg on Friday that the US and Taiwan are planning to, quote, deepen economic ties with some sort of trade agreement. Now, this trade agreement probably won't be a traditional free trade agreement, as that would implicitly recognize Taiwan's sovereignty, but it's still one step closer to recognizing Taiwanese independence and one step further away from the strategic ambiguity which has served the US so well up until now. So, does this new announcement mean that we should take Biden's hawkish comments at face value? Has Biden really endorsed a new Taiwan policy? Well, yes and no. The White House still claims that the US policy hasn't changed and that strategic ambiguity remains the official policy, so Biden's remarks probably still were gaffes. However, it's nonetheless true that the Biden administration is continuing with Trump's hawkish stance on Taiwan, and in some respects, they're actually going further than their predecessor. As you'd expect, this has irked the CCP, who in response have ramped up their rhetoric. For example, in a speech to mark the centennial of the Chinese Communist Party, President Xi Jinping called the reunification of Taiwan a historic mission, and the Chinese state media has sounded increasingly bellicose on the issue. But if you want to know more about this and what's going on in the world, then you should check us out on Nebula. You've likely heard us talk about our streaming service Nebula before, but it's at its lowest price ever right now. So give me 1 minute to explain to you why you should care. And as always with TLDR, there's 3 reasons. Firstly, signing up to Nebula gets you a ton of additional TLDR content. We release some of our videos exclusively on Nebula, and those are full-length proper videos, as well as a super fun studio tour. We also release longer versions of some of our videos. In fact, we release a longer version of our show, The Daily Briefing, on Nebula every single day. That's a lot more TLDR for you every day. Secondly, everything on Nebula is ad-free. And that's not just TLDR either. That's all of your favorite creators like Wendover Productions, Real Life Law, Polymatter, Legal, Half as Interesting, and tons of others. And it's all ad-free, so there's no mid-rolls, and I wouldn't even be talking to you right now. Thirdly, signing up and watching on Nebula really helps the channel. And here's the maths. TLDR viewers signing up to Nebula has significantly improved our ability to monetize our content, which has allowed us to begin employing more staff and investing in new technology to improve our content. You might not notice it quite yet, but you soon will, and signing up is super helpful to make that possible. So, you're convinced, right? Did I do it in a minute? Who knows, it's pre-recorded. But anyway, if you did want to sign up for Nebula, the cheapest way to do so is with the CuriosityStream Nebula bundle deal. That way, if you sign up to CuriosityStream at the crazy low price of $11.59 a year, then you'll also get free access to Nebula as long as you're a paying member. That's right, 2 streaming services for less than $1 a month. And by the way, that crazy low price only lasts for this week. And it's worth saying that CuriosityStream is awesome. It contains absolutely boatloads of high-quality documentaries on all kinds of topics that I know that TLDR viewers are going to love. So if you want both services for $11.59 a year, this week only, then the link is down below. And if not, well, I can't say I haven't tried to convince you. Thanks for your support.